Imagine waking up tomorrow and being told you have 24 hours to become extremely rich. No extensions, no second chances, just one day. Most people would panic. They'd rush, they'd scramble, they'd look for shortcuts. But the people who truly understand wealth would pause. They'd ask one question: what can I do today that truly matters? When time becomes scarce, clarity becomes your richest resource. Suddenly, every conversation, every decision, every idea has weight. You stop chasing everything and start choosing what counts. You realize that money doesn't move the world, value does. If you had only 24 hours, you wouldn't waste it on things that don't create value. You wouldn't scroll through distractions. You wouldn't complain about time. You'd act, you'd think deeply, you'd move with purpose, because urgency strips away excuses. It reveals what we're capable of when comfort is no longer an option. Being rich is not about accumulation, it's about acceleration. The richest people in the world didn't just find ways to earn more, they found reasons to act with more conviction. They understood that money follows impact, and impact follows clarity of purpose. If you only had 24 hours, you'd stop waiting for the right time to start, you'd make it the right time. You'd stop asking for permission to build. You'd realize that the secret to wealth isn't found in opportunity, it's found in action. Acting like you have 24 hours doesn't mean rushing blindly, it means living intentionally, it means speaking with honesty, deciding with courage, and creating with purpose, because wealth, real wealth, is the result of urgency meeting vision. It's the moment you stop saying someday and start saying today. So act like you have 24 hours, because when you live with that kind of focus, the world doesn't just see what you do, it feels why you do it. And that's the moment you become truly rich. Acting as if you have only 24 hours to become extremely rich is not about panic or desperation. It is about clarity and precision. Urgency, when understood correctly, is a tool that removes noise. Most people live as if time is infinite, believing they have endless opportunities to start later, try again, or fix what they neglected. But when time compresses, when the clock starts ticking visibly in front of you, priorities realign. You no longer have the luxury to entertain distractions, indecision, or self-doubt. Every thought begins to demand accountability. You start to see that your purpose, not your schedule, determines your productivity. The human mind behaves differently under a sense of limited time. When urgency is genuine, procrastination loses power. You stop asking, "What should I do first?" and start asking, "What must I do now that truly moves me closer to impact?" This shift is profound because it transforms busyness into direction. Acting with urgency filters out the trivial and magnifies the essential. It separates action that looks important from action that is important. That distinction, more than any strategy, becomes the foundation of wealth creation. Purpose, when combined with urgency, becomes momentum. Without urgency, even the best intentions dissolve into comfort. You may have vision, but without the discipline of time, awareness, that vision remains theoretical. Urgency forces execution. It teaches that ideas are only valuable when acted upon. Having just 24 hours to become rich redefines richness itself. It no longer means stacking cash, but stacking value, trust, and results quickly and meaningfully. You realize that speed is not about rushing. It is about direction without hesitation. There is also a psychological clarity that emerges when time becomes finite. Most people think they lack resources, but what they truly lack is focus. When urgency becomes your mindset, focus becomes automatic. You stop multitasking. You start concentrating energy on the one or two things that make the difference. For instance, instead of chasing every opportunity, you begin asking which opportunity aligns with your strongest skill, your clearest value proposition, and your deepest motivation. That question alone saves years of trial and error. Urgency also reveals character. When the clock is running, your true priorities surface. You start to notice what you default to when pressure rises. Do you freeze? Do you overthink? Or do you create? Those patterns are not weaknesses to fear but signals to refine. Acting as though time is scarce exposes who you are without filters. It strips away excuses, leaving only your discipline, creativity, and resilience visible. That awareness becomes a form of self-wealth, because no amount of money replaces the value of knowing your true capacity under pressure. Urgency demands emotional intelligence. When you believe you have only 24 hours, your communication becomes sharper. You speak with precision, listen with intent, and negotiate with clarity. Every interaction must count, so you begin to build authentic connections rather than superficial ones. In business or leadership, this is a critical advantage. People respond more powerfully to clarity than to charm. When you know your purpose, your urgency communicates confidence, not chaos. It inspires trust because others sense that your actions are guided by something larger than impulse. The urgency of purpose also transforms the way you perceive failure. In a compressed timeline, there is no time to dwell on mistakes. Every failure becomes information, not identity. You learn fast, adapt fast, and move fast. This mental agility, built through urgency, is the real wealth that endures beyond money. It allows you to recover, pivot, and optimize three traits every successful innovator depends on. The fear of failure fades because there is simply no time to entertain it. You act, you adjust, and you act again. Urgency aligns you with reality. It strips away theoretical perfectionism and replaces it with functional progress. Instead of waiting for ideal conditions, you work with what you have: your skills, your network, your time, and your imagination. This realism is not pessimistic. It is empowering. It means you understand that opportunities are rarely convenient, but they are always available to those who move decisively. Acting as though 24 hours is all you have turns someday into now. It reprograms your sense of time from passive to active. When urgency meets purpose, you begin to experience a shift from effort to energy. You no longer push yourself reluctantly. You are pulled forward by intention. Every minute becomes meaningful. The day feels fuller, your actions more aligned, and your confidence stronger. This isn't because you have more time, but because you finally see time. You recognize its fragility, and that awareness gives your actions depth. Ultimately, the urgency of purpose is the discipline to act deliberately, decide swiftly, and live intentionally. It trains you to lead your time instead of follow it. When you internalize this mindset, even without an actual 24-hour deadline, your results compound. You start achieving in days what once took months. You stop measuring success by how long something takes and start measuring it by how true it feels to your purpose. That is how urgency becomes not a countdown to panic, but a compass to purpose. Richness is often misunderstood as a numerical destination, a certain bank balance, a luxury car, a home in the right neighborhood. Yet when the timeline collapses to just 24 hours, that version of wealth loses meaning. If you had only one day to become rich, you would not have time to build empires, invest strategically, or wait for compound interest. You would have to think differently. You would have to define richness not as what you own, but as what you can create, offer, and contribute within that limited time. The scarcity of time exposes the illusion that wealth is purely material. It reminds you that richness is the ability to generate value, influence, and meaning in ways that outlast the clock. True wealth begins with perception. When you stop seeing money as the end goal and start viewing it as the byproduct of value creation, your mindset transforms. Money follows usefulness. If you can solve problems, ease pain, or inspire others, you are already generating wealth in a form that can easily convert into financial outcomes. When people think they have endless time, they chase symbols of wealth. When time is compressed, they chase impact. Acting like you have 24 hours forces that clarity. It reveals that being rich is not about having more, but about becoming more. This redefinition is not philosophical fluff. It is strategic thinking. In a 24-hour window, the only leverage you truly possess is your knowledge, creativity, and relationships. These are assets that don't depreciate with time. The individual who can communicate clearly, innovate under pressure, and mobilize others around an idea becomes wealthy faster than someone waiting for external validation. Richness, therefore, is about resourcefulness, the capacity to turn what you have into something valuable for others. When you start to measure your worth in contribution rather than currency, you automatically align with the mechanics of wealth creation. The act of redefining wealth also challenges your sense of identity. Many people link self-worth to net worth, believing that success is external proof of internal value. But when you imagine a countdown only 24 hours to create richness, you realize that you are already your greatest asset. Your mindset, your empathy, your story, your expertise, these are currencies far more powerful than paper. They compound not by storage, but by sharing. You become rich the moment you realize your capacity to add value in ways that matter. In this compressed timeline, richness must also be emotional and intellectual. Emotional wealth is the ability to stay calm under chaos, to inspire confidence when others panic, and to maintain clarity amid noise. Intellectual wealth is the ability to think, decide, and act with precision. Both are invaluable when time is limited. If you have 24 hours, your emotions and ideas become your most tradable assets. People trust calmness, they follow clarity. The person who can bring structure to confusion creates instant value, and in that value lies true richness. Another layer of redefined wealth is relational capital. If you only had one day to elevate your life, you would quickly realize how vital relationships are. You would reach out to mentors, collaborators, and partners. You would build bridges instead of walls. Every human connection holds potential energy, an introduction, an opportunity, a piece of insight that shifts your trajectory. Wealth grows in networks of trust. Acting with urgency forces you to communicate authentically, to offer something meaningful, and to listen intentionally. These behaviors build relational wealth that transcends money. Richness is also found in purpose alignment. Many people accumulate wealth but remain empty because their money is detached from meaning. When time is short, you seek depth over numbers. You ask, "What can I do that feels significant?" That question transforms wealth into a reflection of purpose. Earning, giving, and creating become one process. You no longer see richness as a finish line, but as a flow, an ongoing exchange between what you contribute and what you receive. Acting as though you have 24 hours refines that awareness. It removes superficial goals and replaces them with meaningful direction. This perspective also dismantles the illusion of comparison. Society teaches that being rich means being richer than someone else. But if the goal must be achieved in 24 hours, comparison becomes irrelevant. You cannot afford to measure yourself against others when every second counts. Instead, you focus on maximizing your potential, using your strengths within your time frame. That independence is a form of liberation. You begin to see that the richest individuals are those who operate by internal standards rather than external applause. In redefining richness, gratitude becomes a multiplier. The moment you become aware of what you already possess, your abilities, your ideas, your network, your health, you shift from scarcity to abundance. That shift fuels action. Gratitude converts awareness into confidence, and confidence into results. In 24 hours, that mindset could make the difference between paralysis and breakthrough. Every person who has built great wealth started by recognizing value where others overlooked it. The mindset of richness is simply the practice of seeing opportunity in limitation. When richness is redefined as contribution, the urgency of 24 hours becomes empowering rather than fearful. It no longer feels like a countdown to exhaustion, but a call to expression. You are not racing time, you are collaborating with it. You realize that wealth is not earned in waiting but in doing, not in collecting but in creating. When richness means living with purpose, giving with authenticity, and building something that matters 24 hours is more than enough to begin. When time is limited, thinking must evolve from theoretical planning to purposeful movement. Acting like you have only 24 hours to become extremely rich eliminates the illusion of infinite options and infinite time. It forces you to recognize that indecision is the costliest decision of all. Every delay becomes a form of self-sabotage. In such a compressed window, the only path forward is decisive action, not reckless impulsivity, but informed, courageous movement that transforms intention into impact. Decisive action is not about always knowing the right choice. It is about committing to a direction and learning through motion. People often overthink because they believe clarity comes before action, but in truth, clarity is a result of action. Every step you take reveals data what works, what doesn't, where to pivot. Acting decisively accelerates learning curves. If you had 24 hours, you wouldn't wait for perfect information. You would act on what you know, test it, and adapt fast. That iterative rhythm is how momentum builds. Wealth, whether material or intellectual, is built on decisions multiplied by speed and consistency. The human brain thrives on movement. When you commit to a decision, you release energy that breaks the inertia of hesitation. Each decision creates psychological momentum, a sense of progress that fuels further action. Conversely, indecision drains energy. It keeps you in a loop of possibilities with no outcomes. Acting decisively channels focus. It signals to your mind that you are in control, that the future is not something that happens to you but something you shape. When people say opportunity favors the bold, they are describing this principle that motion attracts momentum and hesitation repels it. Decisive action also refines judgment. Many fear making the wrong decision, but in a short timeline, wrong decisions are rarely fatal. They are feedback. The faster you act, the faster you learn, and the sooner you can correct your course. Wealth builders, innovators, and leaders understand this deeply. The power of iteration outweighs the illusion of perfection. If you only have 24 hours, perfectionism is no longer a luxury. You act, observe, and adjust. This agility becomes your competitive advantage. Decisive people aren't lucky, they are simply faster learners. Time scarcity makes decisiveness non-negotiable. Imagine having only a single day to shift your life's trajectory. You would not waste time second, guessing your ideas or seeking approval from others. You would decide which opportunity aligns most with your skills and act immediately. This sharpens discernment. You begin filtering choices based on alignment rather than fear. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I don't try?" This subtle shift is the foundation of high-performance thinking. Fear shrinks under the weight of action, but it multiplies in stillness. Decisive action is also a matter of identity. The moment you see yourself as someone who takes immediate, meaningful steps, your behavior adapts to match that identity. You stop waiting for motivation because your self-image demands motion. Every decisive act reinforces confidence, and confidence, in turn, strengthens decision-making. This feedback loop builds an internal economy of trust. You begin to trust your own judgment. In business, in relationships, in personal growth, this trust becomes an invisible currency that compounds faster than money. Another layer of decisiveness lies in emotional control. Pressure and urgency can cloud judgment, but decisive individuals learn to channel intensity into focus. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond strategically. When you act like you have 24 hours to become rich, you learn to separate emotion from execution. You feel the fear, but you act anyway. That discipline creates emotional intelligence under pressure. It teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else, purpose, growth, legacy, is more important than fear. Decisive action is the bridge between vision and result. Many people have ideas, few have implementation. The difference is not intelligence but courage to decide. Every goal requires a moment of commitment, a moment when thinking stops and doing begins. Those who act decisively understand that waiting for certainty is waiting for a condition that never arrives. They don't seek guarantees, they create them through effort. In a 24-hour mindset, you don't ask, "What if it doesn't work?" You ask, "What must I do to make it work now?" That question moves you from victimhood to ownership. Momentum generated by decisive action also influences others. People follow movement, not words. When you act with conviction, you create a gravitational pull that attracts support, trust, and collaboration. Teams, investors, and partners are drawn to decisiveness because it communicates belief. Even if the path is uncertain, visible commitment builds confidence in others. A single act of decisiveness can mobilize resources that hesitation would never access. Decisive action cultivates resilience. Every choice carries risk, and every risk carries potential failure. But when you operate decisively, failure loses its sting. It becomes a teacher, not a verdict. Acting fast and failing small allows rapid recovery, continuous iteration, and steady growth. Indecision, on the other hand, creates silent decay. Nothing breaks visibly, but nothing builds either. In a 24-hour mindset, you realize that stagnation is the real enemy of wealth. You don't need perfect conditions, you need consistent motion. The power of decisive action lies in the truth that time rewards those who move. Every moment of choice is a fork between delay and creation. Acting decisively compresses experience into learning, turns uncertainty into opportunity, and transforms potential into performance. When urgency governs time, decision governs destiny. When time becomes limited, every decision gains intensity. Acting as if you have only 24 hours to become extremely rich creates pressure, a sense that the clock is ticking and every move matters. Yet within that urgency lies a paradox. The most effective actions are not reckless, but visionary. The ability to maintain long-term thinking under short-term pressure defines extraordinary individuals. It is not about speed alone, it is about direction. Acting fast is meaningless unless you know where you are going. Long-term vision under short-term pressure transforms chaos into clarity and stress into strategy. Pressure compresses time, and in that compression, priorities surface. When you only have a day, you start to see what truly aligns with your larger purpose. The noise fades, the urgency reveals what deserves your full attention. This is the hidden advantage of a tight timeline. It forces strategic minimalism. You stop scattering energy across endless tasks and instead channel focus into what produces the greatest lasting impact. This balance between immediacy and foresight is what converts frantic activity into meaningful progress. Long-term vision is not about distant dreams, it is about consistency of purpose. Even when the clock is running fast, the question remains the same: what actions today create value tomorrow? Pressure can blur this perspective for most people, but those who master the art of acting urgently while thinking long-term see pressure differently. They interpret it not as a threat, but as a test of discipline. Instead of reacting impulsively, they act intentionally. They understand that sustainable wealth, financial or intellectual, cannot come from panic-driven effort, but from purpose-guided execution. Short-term pressure tests patience. When time is scarce, the temptation is to choose the quickest gain. Yet true leaders and visionaries resist that impulse. They understand that not every opportunity deserves attention, and not every quick win serves the larger goal. The real strength is in selective urgency, the ability to act fast without losing perspective. Each decision becomes a thread woven into a bigger design. Acting with a 24-hour mindset teaches you to measure choices by alignment, not immediacy. You act swiftly but with strategic foresight, ensuring that today's steps still build tomorrow's foundation. Maintaining long-term vision in urgency also develops mental endurance. Pressure can narrow your vision, making you focus only on what's directly ahead. But those who think expansively under pressure cultivate panoramic awareness. They see patterns, connections, and consequences beyond the moment. This mindset turns deadlines into catalysts. It transforms stress into focus and fear into precision. The greater the pressure, the more disciplined the thought process must become. Under such conditions, emotional intelligence becomes as vital as intellect. The mind under pressure seeks relief, but vision provides direction. When you think long term, even within a 24-hour constraint, you give pressure a purpose. Each challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than an obstacle. The difference lies in interpretation. Short-term thinkers see the clock as a countdown to failure. Long-term thinkers see it as a framework for discipline. They recognize that every decision made in urgency trains the mind for future challenges. Acting within pressure becomes a rehearsal for leadership. This dynamic is visible in innovation and entrepreneurship. The most successful creators operate in high-pressure environments where time, competition, and expectations converge. Yet they continue to think beyond the immediate. They design systems, not reactions. They invest energy into processes that outlive the moment. If given only 24 hours, they would spend it creating something that continues to generate value afterward: a product, an idea, a message, or a network. Short-term pressure does not shrink their vision, it sharpens it. Balancing urgency and vision also requires a shift from control to adaptability. The illusion of control disappears under time pressure, and what remains is response. Those with long-term vision accept that not everything can be managed, but everything can be navigated. They remain flexible without losing focus. Each setback becomes data, each obstacle a clue. Acting as though time is limited teaches you that progress is not linear, it is iterative, built on continual adjustments, guided by an unchanging purpose. Patience within urgency is another dimension of this principle. True progress demands both acceleration and restraint. If you rush every move, you lose precision. If you hesitate, you lose opportunity. The ability to act quickly while thinking deeply creates strategic rhythm. This rhythm is how visionaries sustain growth, fast decisions anchored in clear purpose. Acting like you have 24 hours to become rich trains this duality: intensity in effort, clarity in direction. Long-term vision under pressure also redefines success metrics. Instead of measuring results by immediate rewards, you start measuring by momentum, learning, and alignment. You realize that every small, focused action compounds. Even within 24 hours, each step taken with foresight contributes to exponential growth later. The short term becomes the seedbed of the long term. Pressure, therefore, is not a barrier but a magnifier. It amplifies both your discipline and your distractions. In this mindset, urgency and vision are not opposites, they are partners. Urgency provides the spark, vision provides the map. Without urgency, vision stays theoretical. Without vision, urgency becomes chaos. The most successful people master this integration. They move quickly but not mindlessly, act boldly but not blindly, and execute today while designing tomorrow. Acting as though time is scarce doesn't make them reckless. It makes them aware that every second spent wisely extends beyond the clock. The fusion of long-term vision with short-term pressure reveals that true wealth is a process of compounding intentional actions over time, even under constraint. Each decision, made with both urgency and foresight, becomes part of a larger story, one where every hour counts not just toward survival, but toward significance. Operating under the belief that only 24 hours remain to become extremely rich forces a complete transformation of mindset. Time scarcity intensifies focus and accelerates decision-making, yet beneath that pressure, true success belongs to those who preserve vision beyond the moment. It is not enough to move quickly, one must move purposefully. The skill lies in harmonizing immediate action with enduring direction. The pressure of the present must serve the purpose of the future. Short-term urgency sharpens your instincts, but long-term vision refines your strategy. When urgency takes over, clarity of vision becomes a stabilizing force. The individual who can think beyond the ticking clock while acting decisively in the now possesses an uncommon advantage. Most people, when pressed for time, abandon perspective. They act impulsively, driven by fear of missing out or the illusion of quick wins. The disciplined mind does the opposite. It compresses its focus without collapsing its foresight. Each move, though immediate, still aligns with a larger blueprint. Acting within urgency but guided by vision is how lasting wealth, both financial and intellectual, is built. Pressure exposes values. When time is limited, you naturally prioritize what matters most. Every decision becomes a reflection of your internal hierarchy of importance. This is why short-term pressure is not an enemy to long-term success, but a teacher of it. It reveals what you truly care about, what you're willing to defend, and what you can release. When the window of opportunity narrows, superficial goals fade. You start acting in alignment with your purpose rather than your ego. The paradox is that constraint often expands understanding. You begin to see which small steps compound into lasting results. Long-term vision under short-term constraints requires mental agility. It demands that you hold two opposite energies at once: urgency and patience. Urgency compels you to act immediately, while patience reminds you that significant outcomes need time to unfold. The balance between the two produces strategic calm. When you act as though time is running out, you learn to distinguish between motion and progress. Not every fast action leads to growth. Some are mere reactions. The visionary under pressure chooses actions that not only solve the present challenge, but also strengthen future stability. Short-term pressure has a unique psychological effect. It compresses attention, and in doing so, exposes inefficiency. When every minute matters, you quickly realize how much time is usually wasted on low-value activity. Urgency forces prioritization. But what makes this powerful is coupling that prioritization with foresight, asking not just, "What must I do now?" but "What must I do now that still matters tomorrow?" That second question is the bridge between temporary success and sustainable achievement. Each decision becomes a seed planted for future harvest. Those who master this mindset operate with precision. They make quick decisions, but not careless ones. They understand that in a high-pressure environment, momentum and mindfulness must coexist. Acting too slowly risks opportunity, but acting without reflection risks direction. Every step must align with a guiding principle, a vision that gives meaning to movement. The truly strategic mind views urgency not as chaos, but as concentrated opportunity. Within every short deadline lies the potential to build systems, create habits, or launch ideas that continue generating value long after the pressure fades. Long-term vision also transforms the emotional relationship with pressure. Instead of fearing the countdown, you begin to appreciate it as a focusing mechanism. Deadlines and constraints become tools for sharpening execution. They strip away indecision, forcing commitment. Each decision made under pressure strengthens resilience. You learn to trust your instincts, refine your strategy, and act even when conditions aren't perfect. That emotional maturity, staying calm in acceleration, becomes a defining trait of long-term thinkers. In wealth creation or leadership, those who thrive under time constraints are those who keep the horizon in view while handling the present. They know that real growth is not achieved in a single burst, but through continuous, compounded effort. Acting with the intensity of 24 hours while thinking in the scale of decades transforms every small decision into an investment. Every conversation, task, or opportunity is treated as a potential foundation for future outcomes. This compound perspective is how legacies are built in moments of urgency. Maintaining vision under pressure also requires adaptability. The faster the pace, the more conditions shift. Long-term thinkers understand that plans may change, but principles must remain constant. They adjust strategies without abandoning purpose. When you operate as if time is limited, flexibility becomes survival. You pivot quickly, refine continuously, and learn relentlessly. This mindset converts pressure into agility, a skill that compounds value in unpredictable environments. Short-term pressure refines leadership. When you act decisively yet with foresight, others sense confidence. They see direction in your urgency. This attracts collaboration, trust, and influence in tangible assets that contribute more to long-term richness than any immediate reward. Vision within pressure communicates stability. It tells others you can act without losing purpose. That credibility becomes part of your wealth, a reputation that multiplies opportunity. Balancing long-term vision and short-term execution transforms productivity into mastery. You stop measuring success by how much you do in a day and start measuring it by how much of that effort builds your future. Acting with the intensity of a 24-hour deadline while thinking in decades creates a rare combination: speed with sustainability, ambition with awareness, and urgency with purpose. Under pressure, you learn that the richest rewards belong not to those who move fastest, but to those who move fastest in the right direction.